Continuation of the former video. We claim and have plenty of arguments that genes were knocked out thousands of years ago, probably to induce and facilitate us humans to abandon our original sustainable and for nature and otherwise respectful lifestyle that was based on agroforests, and was a kind of what could be considered New Age, described above, this to facilitate acceptance of an integration in a wider and quite unsustainable culture and lifestyle, based on a much less healthy tilling agriculture, that consequently and ultimately would become the lifestyle of all modern humans, and that till today cause and aggravate all kinds of climate, health, and other challenges. We claim that genes were proposedly knocked out in a clever indirect, probably not invasive way of genetic manipulation by a powerful warfare, mining, conquest-oriented elite group, also involving religious tactics and proto-religions, that induced those that they suppressed and conquered to think of them as superior or even divine, as their creators. These elites were keen on procreation of the easier-to-manipulate groups with the knocked-out genes, to have convenient and somehow submitted manpower for labor, warfare, mining, and or planned population turnover events. In a way these, we modern humans, back then were their alternative for robots and drones. In the most ancient artifacts etc. spread over the globe, this elite in cases are depicted as viracocha, tiki, make, and or sometimes called white people ancestors, making use of cuneiform writing and pre-Mesopotamian tablets, hybrids, elite, supposed and self-declared gods that themselves claim to be beneficial, but also or above all should be feared, and which today by some are, probably wrongly, interpreted as extraterrestrials, also because of them being advanced and apparently appearing out of the blue, which was not the case. Later on, this initial rather global religion imperium is replaced by a series of religions, including in the West, with certain important and characteristic Bible-oriented regions cultures. Hybrids and elites, their creators, minority, will cause organized massive navigation with fleets benefiting of the ocean currents and gyres and consequential population turnover events, with at least one important event around 12,000 BP, extinction of megafauna and of Clovis in the Americas, YHPQ, American early modern humans. Present-day non-Amazon Native Americans are descendants of the Clovis people, and Clovis-likes in Western Eurasia, YHPC, which are descendant of very closely related YHPQ and both Q and R, and C, with origin root cradle in the Americas, Cro-Magnons or European early modern humans, EEMH, and later also Magdalenins. The latest population turnover events took place around 5000 BP, YHPR1A Yamner etc. and later YHPR1B with Stonehenge and Karnak and most of the Atlantic facade with corded ware culture and Bell Beaker culture. Both are confirmed by extensive ancient DNA evidence and again quite inconvenient for consensus and as expected not readily accepted by consensus, spread by media and generally known of by the general public. The elites themselves also were specialized, hybrids and had or evolved, hybridized having white or with a skin, later, in the Austronesian expansion, also dark skin. The initially existing coherence between the subsequent groups of hybrids will eventually and later be lost, and they will fight and conquer each other systematically, this in combination with more, genetic, population turnovers, irreversible climate disruption and consequent challenges and calamities by forest destruction and a massive and unsustainable tilling agriculture, but also intense mixturing interbreeding. The Oracle of Delphi in Greece, operating for hundreds of years until under 2,000 years ago, was situated in a back then forested area with plenty of wells, and that today turned arid without good potential for fertile forests, precipitation, and left without wells. This well-described place and its consequent degeneration of soil and climate is typical for the Mediterranean, Middle East and important and ever more parts of the world. Today, because of the scale, the phenomenon is more often considered and defined as global. The resulting humans are us 8 billion modern humans in a world that suffered climate and soil degradation already thousands of years ago. The so-called Green Revolution gives us a false sense of security. Without an ever-increasing input of fertilizers amongst others, our climate would be more arid and soils would be less productive than they ever were, at least since the onset of the Holocene after the Younger Dryas. What we should take away is that we were genetically modified and that apart from apparent cognitive improvements and adaptations we also suffer disabling, not necessarily of, or rather not of the for the situation, unsustainable overturn and agriculture lifestyles and no longer sustainable agroforest lifestyles, needed and validated cognitive functions. If in the tests where chimpanzees were proven to be much more intelligent and faster than we humans, the Amazon amarins also turn out to be more intelligent and faster, this could indicate that in the for human cognitive functions supposed important facial and vocal areas they are, also, less disabled than we modern humans are and even as our archaic sister groups were. If this would be the result, and if that result was confirmed by comparison of methylation in that same area, then that would be yet another indication or proof, and a paradigm for consensus, that a. We modern humans are genetically modified and deprived of certain capabilities related to intelligence or cognitive capabilities that are less validated by us modern humans since the Younger Dryas and today. B. It also would prove we modern humans are descendants of the Amazon Amarins and not the other way around. C. Amazon Amarins, chimpanzees, and taxi drivers, depending on spatial capabilities, are less prone to Alzheimer's, dementia, and degenerative diseases in general. This could mean that our disabling hybridization not only costed us certain cognitive capabilities, but also deprives us from heart and brain health, and made and still make us more prone to degenerative diseases and epidemics, and increases genome instability, which makes more prone to new diseases, like autism. This is in line with recent studies, 2022 Nobel Prize Drive Parbo and his colleagues, that associate Neanderthal DNA and modern humans with a fraction of Neanderthal DNA with certain diseases and epidemics. The latter point, C, is not a full proof, but rather an interesting association, possibly with very high probability, which can make it equivalent to a full proof at best, or provisional answer the many unexplained paradigms of consensus at worst. Also interesting is that Amazon Amarins are recognized for the creation hybridization of some of the most important food crops today. 60% of the world today is fed by the Amarins created crops. Hybridization technically is a kind of a creation, however a rather technical creation or something clearly human-made. We, the Amarins hybridized modern humans, just like with the Amarins hybridized crops, are marked by jumping genes, and this in high frequencies, under less ideal conditions, leading to instability of the DNA, which in turn leads to vulnerability to diseases and epidemics. We consider jumping genes as markers of hybridization and not as some random mutation that were helpful in a domestication, crossing and selection process. It is obvious that once the Amerindians lost the knowledge to hybridize with hybridization based on jumping genes, plants, animals, and humans, these jumping genes never occurred again, and modern science is unable to create new crops as the Amerindians did many thousand years ago. We will never be able to pinpoint our ancestors and recognize the way they thrived by some simple mtDNA deduction, which is only one and quite secondary ancestral marker, or by a simple larger brain deduction, which is not even a marker, and any deduction based on it has proven wrong or insecure at best. The Neanderthals lived in the same period and place as those Clovis and Clovis-like groups, peoples that went extinct, but it is known they never interbred. Neanderthals disappeared, went extinct before or at the time we modern humans arrived, just as the Clovis people and Clovis-like and megafauna for that matter. Neanderthals never existed in the same place at the same time as us modern humans. There never was a chance for modern humans and Neanderthals to interbreed, as consensus unscientifically assumes, in order to get rid of the unsurmountable paradigm that we have DNA and methylation similar to them, the Neanderthal, as well as Denisovan and most probably Homo erectus. Once DNA of them too will be sequenced somewhere in the future, or after recognizing already sequenced DNA as being of Homo erectus after all. The correct explanation is that we underwent a similar process of hybridization executed by our ancestors in accordance to what all scientific markers tell us over and over, not that we interbred as scientific markers prove contrary over and over. In general, we humans will have to do way better and act much quicker and plan-wise than what we actually do, in order to A. Solve our increasing number of challenges, threats and calamities. B. Solve the oncoming perfect storms. C. If we want to understand all relevant essentials for life and existence.